What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Twink Revolution, episode 18, I believe. I'm Sam.
And I'm Gian.
And we got a really special episode.
Yeah, special in the in the good sense.
Yeah, not the bad sense.
We've got a guest who's a total get for us.
Yeah.
And this episode is basically just going to be us shooting the shit with her. So here it is. It is our special interview with the one and only Aimee Terese.
Yeah, check it out.
Well, welcome, Aimee Terese, to Twink Revolution. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're the first woman on our podcast, so you just shattered that glass ceiling.
We're going to talk over you for the next 45 minutes now.
Please do. It's no drama, honestly.
The toxic masculinity is just stroking through us, and we must express it, so.
Well, you know me, men's rights advocate.
So we decided to do a little research, obviously, just in case our listeners aren't familiar with who you are. And if you kind of search your name on Twitter, one of the really good ones which comes up, which actually misspells your last name, is how do you explain Aimee Terese to somebody? Which I'll have a go, and then why don't you let me know sort of how we do?
Do you want me to give it a shot?
No, I was going to see, because I want you to check our correctness here, because, a lot of stuff gets said about you, so you get to set the record straight.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I'm sure that all it's going to, there's no contradictions here. Just simply, setting the record straight, that'll make all the difference.
Totally. So Aimee is the host of a wonderful podcast called What's Left, which is available where all good podcasts are sold. And is a little bit of an online figure of some controversy, I think it's fair to say. It might be the understatement of the decade, but this is a sort of an Australia-New Zealand episode, so we're being a little understated here. So, I mean, as far as I can tell, like, you can get clout online now by literally just writing tweets that shit on you. Like, is that fair?
It developed into like a microeconomy of a sort.
You're creating jobs.
There's a tweet from a Wendy Muse from December of 2019 saying, Hillary Clinton is the Aimee Terese of modern U.S. politics, and we should treat her like the pariah she is by shunning her until she is no longer relevant. This got 462 likes and 57 retweets. Well,
that's baby talk.
I know, that's amazing.
That's child's play. Come on, Wendy, step it up. You got to do better. You can get like Hillary Clinton and Aimee, and you couldn't even crack the 1,000.
I know.
What are you doing? Yeah, what are you doing, amateur?
Why even bother?
Yeah. There's also a conspiracy. Mike tweeted, every day the evidence mounts that Aimee Terese is a psycho guerrilla marketing campaign for Monster Energy to tarnish the brand of Red Bull. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Just sitting around like a boomer, rolling in all my Monster Energy money.
We're not going to do this all day. I promise there's a lot more substance
I find
here,
it's so funny to me. Like, it's just so, honestly, like, I there are times when it's extremely trying, but, like, the moment you sort of just step back and, like, think about it as a normal person, the whole thing's just bizarre. Like, I was telling my sister at Christmas time that somebody, like, dressed as me for Halloween, and that like people talk about me as if I was like the second coming of Adolf Hitler. Like, it's so stupid. Like it really, the whole thing just has like this discursive life of its own that literally has nothing to do with me. Like, and so so it doesn't faze me. It's sort of like a fascinating like reflection of something sociologically, I think.
You would definitely believe, if you were to sort of just read this, that you were kind of a supervillain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just think I'm a container object that they project into. That's pretty clearly what's going on. And it's also a matter of just like, it's much easier to get some form of catharsis about the extremely contradictory state of politics, you just resolve it by projecting onto this just like specter that is Aimee, Terese, like this silly like online, it's like digital specter that has nothing to do with me.
Well, I mean, so you definitely you bring a pretty in your face style of pretty straightforward Marxist analysis to Twitter, right? I mean, like I feel like you would not be out of step if the entire online left were not so weird.
There is no left. Like to the extent that there's any left. Yeah, like to the extent that there's any kind of leftist energy or sentiment or action going on, it's in unions and it's in, you know, to whatever extent there is on the ground, like working class action that develops the action, the capacities and the power of the working class as a class. And so that may incorporate some of the people, you know, contributing towards, like volunteering towards Sanders' team. But like in terms of like the left, to me, implies some form of working class social base. And, you know, the neoliberal era has totally atomized and smashed unions. And so like to the extent that there's a left, it's extremely fractious and it's got basically nothing to do with the elite discourse that goes on online. Like, it's fine.
Yeah,
like it is what it is. I mean, not really. Like, I mean, yeah, like listen to podcasts. That's cool. Like, but like, they're just they're a product of one kind or another. Like they're mostly entertainment, but like that's fine too. You know, like. There's nothing revolutionary about listening to podcasts either, you know. I'm not going to pretend that my podcast is doing anything revolutionary. Like, get a grip.
Oh yeah. Well, you're doing, I'd say, slightly more serious work than we do. We're mostly about sort of just like gay jokes interspersed with shitting on things, which, you know, the world needs that too. But it's catharsis, as you say.
Yeah,
our brand is not liking anything.
Pardon?
I said our brand is basically not liking anything, according to our fans. So.
Oh, that's right. I'm a nihilistic hater pessimist too, so it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, so we'll move on from your haters, but I mean, like,
I only had one. That wasn't even interesting.
Oh, sorry. Well, here's believe me, there's a lot here. So, here's one of my favorites. Is this is just a sign off, and I love it. The company you keep here. Good night, everyone. Fuck Tucker Carlson. Fuck Aimee Terese. Trans rights are human rights. Good. You know?
Yeah. Human rights are bourgeois ideology. Kiss my ass.
Yes.
Like, of course, interesting you bring that up. Of course, trans people deserve healthcare and fucking the full enfranchisement and all the rest. Like, it just seems to me that fixating on stuff that isn't really worthy of debate, it says more about the people doing it than me, you know? Like, this is a given at this point, and nothing I've ever said would contradict that. Like,
well, so that's actually, I think one of my hypotheses about why you get a lot of hate is you do kind of skip over the boring stuff that signals your inclusion in the political tribe. Right, like you don't do the whole like throat clearing of like, oh well, yes, of course, I hew to all these particular aesthetic principles that mark me as part of, you know, your crew, and now let me give my critique. You kind of just go like, fuck it, here's the critique, here's the interesting bit, here's the meat, you know.
Yeah, well, I just think that like, when you do that, you're ultimately running reactive in the shadow of ideological constructs that don't serve your purposes, if that makes sense. Like, like if you do that, you've already incorporated your opponent's bullshit into your thing, you know? And like, first off, Twitter's a pretty limited medium, but secondly, like, I don't know, there was this thing that Freddie DeBoer wrote a few years ago, just like something to the effect of like, it just seems so kind of demeaning to like constantly do that. Like there's something really self-referential in it as opposed to other-oriented, you know? And so, I don't know, that really struck me, and I don't really bother anymore. There's very little point. Like if people want to misinterpret you, there's a limited amount you can do to prevent that, you know?
Yeah, if it wasn't one thing, it would probably be some other one. Some other thing.
Yeah, because like I think ultimately like the distinction here is a political one, not a discursive one, you know? Like
yeah, it presupposes that these people are all actually kind of on the same side. Some side which is like the blended political left, right? Which means a bunch of libs.
Yes, precisely. It's funny, I was thinking today, I was like, I think fundamentally, like, these people support Sanders as a good Liberal candidate. Like, whatever the label, ultimately, like, their reasoning is that he's a good Liberal candidate. And that's great. Like, there's certainly no socialist, like, electoralism is kind of incoherent anyway. But, like, we're also not at a point where people can have, like, the right ideology to support the candidate. Like, that's great. But, like, I don't know, it's just frustrating that particularly anyone that's, like, millennial or younger just doesn't even conceive of the differences. Like, I'm mates with a bunch of, like, Generation X's that are liberal, and they just, like, they're not under any illusions. Like, even they're under many illusions because they're liberals, but, like, they think that Sanders is a good Liberal candidate, and that's fine. But it's when these people, like, totally animated by liberal reasoning are like getting abusive towards me. It's just like nothing I'm saying is even interesting from a Marxist perspective. Like, it's all pretty banal. Like, grow up.
But that's kind of true of anybody kind of just giving a full-throated sort of material analysis or reading of our current political moment, right? Sounds strident and out of step to as you say, sort of liberals who have made the sort of have convinced themselves of the confusing point that they are socialists because they, for liberal reasons, support a socialist candidate.
Yeah, that was very efficient the way you said that. That's correct. Yes.
That wasn't. I stumbled over it about 6 times.
No, it was. It was. It was. And like, it's good. Like, there's no like, those people we need. Like, of course.
Yeah. No, it's got to be a big tent, and we're gonna have to like grit our teeth and bear it.
Yeah, of course. Like, there's no point worrying about. But like, it just is frustrating to like. Actually, no, it's not frustrating. It's like none of this is real. You know, the only thing that's really bugging me out at the moment is like because they've displaced any ability for people who have a more materialist frame to even get a word in. What we're getting is this totally mystified set of stakes where you have just two different brands of liberals doing liberal analysis, but then because half of them are calling themselves socialists, they're crowding out a materialist analysis and sort of making aesthetic critiques that like just have a disciplinary force in the discourse. Like, oh, don't listen to them. They're just nihilists. They're just depressing. They're just haters, relentlessly negative. It's like, no, bitch. Like, here's the lay of the land. There's a bunch of really big contradictions that we need to deal with here. Like, I'm not just like being a hater and being negative. Like,
oh, well, here's actually another tweet from October 29th, 2019. A fan of yours, Daniel M, asks, has Aimee Terese considered a hobby aside from being a constant massive wrecker who's permanently salty online?
Have you bitches considered not being so dumb and wrong all the time, and then I wouldn't be forced to be in this position? No, I'm kidding. I just, I don't know, whatever. Like, I don't. It's funny. Like, I was chatting with Angela Nagel recently, and just like the thing about it is it's got nothing actually to do with me. Like, I'm fungible in this, you know? Like, it's like this is what they do to people who are critiquing their own behavior but speaking in their own language. So they'll try at first to sort of, you know, say, oh, you know, you're racist, you're Strasserite, you're this, that, and the rest. And sometimes that sticks, and I think to some extent that's stuck, and like, whatever, what are you going to do?
Yes, there's a few tweets like that about you.
Oh, yeah, just, every now and then. But, like, yeah, I mean, the fascist just means, like, cares about working class interests at this point. Like, fuck it, whatever.
Or even just bad.
Yeah, exactly, totally. I mean, so much of this shit is just like the absolute repeat of a million things that have happened historically. Like Orwell was writing in the 30s that fascist no longer means anything. Like, like Rosa Luxemburg was saying well over 100 years ago that sometimes like the most revolutionary thing you can do is tell the truth. Like, just, like none of this is entirely new. Like the particulars are new, but a lot of it is pretty well trod ground at this point. So, yeah, it just, I don't know. Sorry,
So
getting all
basically you're
pensive and shit.
So basically, you're telling everyone to go read more books about Rosa Luxemburg and stuff. Is that what you're telling everyone?
No,
So you're assigning homework like a lib?
No, I don't think that helps. Actually, I think you give these people anything, and it's just more artillery for them.
So I mean, I genuinely out of that though. I mean, like for all the shit you get. I mean, what do you feel like you get out of it? I mean, Twitter is spectacle, and it's a weird form of entertainment in some sense. But I'm curious, like, what is what is it like being you in this world, and what do you feel like you're getting out of it?
I'm just like a fucking alienated late capitalist subject, like the next person. Like, obviously,
cool. I'm
being flip. No, I'm being flip. I have a lot of dead time, like during my days as part of my job and at school, and because I have chronic ADD, I first started using it just as like. It's just like a sinkhole for like ADD energy, basically. Like, just to like keep me occupied rather than like spinning my wheels when I need to sit still somewhere. And then just now it kind of is what it is. Really, it's probably there's probably an aspect of addiction in there, if I'm being totally frank.
Well, it's a multi-billion-dollar company that is designed to create addictive experiences online. So it's not. So, I mean, I do the same thing. Like when I'm feeling disaffected by my job, I just get on Twitter and start shooting off shit.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, as alienating or alienated as the platform is, like, and as like as much as hostility as I might encounter there, it's also, I think, I find it extremely instructive in terms of sort of showing like it sort of like shows like you can get a pretty good symptomatic read on certain like currents in politics, sort of ahead of where you would if you just like watched the news or read the newspaper or whatever else. Like there's, I don't know, it sort of gives you a finger on the pulse of these people who have like inordinate propaganda control, and so it sort of allows you to anticipate certain things like in advance of them becoming more visible to other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and totally. I mean, finger on the pulse, I think that wouldn't be the part of the anatomy I would use to describe Twitter necessarily, but point taken.
No. If I were describing Twitter itself, I would say it's like a toilet bowl. Like it's good to go and like get rid of your business, but you don't want to stick your head in there and look around.
It's the Zizek, the Zizek toilet article is basically just playing out on Twitter. It's sort of us inspecting.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons we were really excited to have you on is if our dear listeners have not realized, you are Australian, right? I mean,
yes, that's correct.
Yeah, guilty as charged. Yeah, good. We got her.
Indeed.
Found.
G'day, mates.
Sam is a big animal lover, and apparently your country through just the individual actions of bad people being fascism. Individually bad. Have just decided to murder a fuck ton of animals.
Yeah, 500 million according to the World Wildlife Foundation. I'm glad they counted every single dead body right now. But no, I've noticed you've been tweeting about the reality of Australia having bushfires and saying that there's been bad ones, and that makes you a climate change denier according to many lovers or haters, whatever you want to call them.
Correct. Yes. Of course. I'm advancing a particular strain of eco-fascist ideology. It's a subcategory of, you know, my particular brand of Australian stresserism. This is just like a niche aspect of it.
I guess I just wanted to know, like, what were your like what was your mindset with this? Like, what are your thoughts changed about how you address the topic, or is it kind of
like, yes and no. I mean, it's sort of, I feel with this stuff, like once you realize what triggers them, like you learn something about it. So it's genuinely funny. Like the things that grind their gears the most are never things that I necessarily anticipate will. And I really didn't expect that to sort of, I should have felt like I didn't expect that to bug people out so much. Like, I think, like, I find there to be something really just like this kind of like ghoulish, like morbid ghoulishness in weaponizing certain people's tragedy and pain in order to wedge it into your particular politics or your particular like political project. And so when I saw Ryan Graham tweeting all this like apocalyptic shit about Australian fires, like this is what climate apocalypse looks like, blah blah blah, it's just like, dude, like, you have been advancing Elizabeth Warren's fucking presidential candidacy like nobody else. And 2 days ago, 2 days prior to that, he was tweeting about, he was just doing one of those like designed to go viral tweets about his fucking kid going to a hospital and, you know, the $200 price of the blah, blah, blah. It's like, bitch, you're like, the candidate you're advancing is the one who has done the most damage to the fight for Medicare for all. Like, you're such a cynical... Anyway, sorry, I tried to cut myself off there. Anyway, so no then worries. To see him doing it 2 days later, like, in relation to climate change, it's just like, dude, there have been, like, first off, the Australian bush itself needs fires in order to regenerate. Like, there are even, like, yeah, it's like, it's evolved this way. There are even, like, with many of the types of trees, there are, like, pods that are rock solid and contain the seeds for the new plants, and they don't even open. Like, they're like a rock solid, like a tennis ball or like a macadamia nut, the external part. They only burst open through fire heat, right? So, like, this is literally, our bush is evolved to regenerate through fire. Now, that's not, and we've had fucking horrifying apocalyptic looking fires throughout the 20th century. Now, like, I'm making no claims about climate change or, you know, whether they're getting better or worse. Like, I'm not claiming any of that. I'm simply saying that, like, to tie an individual event to your political cause like that is just really tacky and, like, fuck off, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of this is really hilarious, seen as this liberal crowd often claims to be the party or, like, the group of science, but it's completely devoid of science when it comes to this, like, fetishism of, like, climate change, like catastrophe. But also it's it's like a distraction from the legitimate causes. Like, sure, climate change probably plays a role, but so is austerity and, like, Australia and things like people setting fires and being stupid. So it's like there's a bunch of causes they're not willing to talk about.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And I also think that, like, climate change in the present moment is also serving a particular purpose, and that's as this, like, universalizing ideology that is almost better than woke sectarianism at advancing professional class interests at the expense of the working class. Because rather than being this balkanized, like, identity hustle that separates the middle class, this is like this unifying discourse with this, like, apocalyptic what do they call it? Like, you know, it's like death cults where it's like when prophecy fails. Yeah. This is like some when prophecy fails shit. Like, the earth is going to end in 10 years, so you have to give us ultimate power right now. Like, I'm sorry, but it's so fucking transparent. Like,
no, it's the big scary external threat, right?
Yes, and there's no our institutions as currently constituted of nation states in a structural position of competition with each other. So because there is no institutional path by which we realistically attend to this, it just seems to me that it's going to become such an effective disciplinary force and legitimating ideology for like austerity and marginalizing the interests of working class people. Like, I know this is just a tweet, but I saw a few weeks ago, this is what I've been like annoyingly worried about. And then I see some motherfucker like Chris Hayes tweeted that the Green New Deal is more important than Medicare for all. Like if we're doing priorities, then that needs to be prioritized. And this is exactly what I had been worried about, right? Like, so first off, there's no path by which you have any, meaningful impact on climate change short of building or radically reorienting the institutions in which any policy would be enacted. Like you would need to build the kind of class power that would allow us to confront the reality that the problem here is a set of materially invested actors in the capital class. Like, like if this is as big of a problem as you claim it is, then you don't just write policy that can take power from corporations. That's not the way political economy operates, right? So like, because they're not doing any of that, because they're not talking nuclear, there's something very like, the role that it's playing politically to me is, it generates a lot of skepticism, which is not skepticism about the climate, the fact of climate change. It's skepticism about the utility of it for people who are advancing class interests that are not the class interests of the working class. Sorry.
So we just to because we're trying to be your we're going to be your platforming your Strasserite views here. So just to be clear, I mean you have no real beef with climate change as a scientific consensus, but you're saying these people are not sincere in their response to it if they believe it as they say they do.
I'm saying there are fundamental institutional problems to taking the requisite action. They're not attending to those, and they're wielding this in a way that I think advances the class interests of the professional middle class and elite. Like it advances a set of it's in the interest of the left flank of capital to weaponize this issue.
Don't you
in
think
ways that I think
potentially, right? I mean, it actually, like, if your corporation greenwashes better than any other, and let's say you're a giant mining conglomerate or something, like, yeah, but we give back to the rainforest or some bullshit. That's actually kind of effective within this framework.
Yes, of course. The whole thing ties beautifully into the neoliberal like NGO industrial complex, which is the feeding pipeline of the Democratic Party and all of their interests. The whole thing is political. It's political economy all the way down. Like, for instance, IKEA gets regularly recognized as being incredibly environmentally friendly. They make quasi-disposable furniture that then they just pay for Greenpeace and other NGOs to certify them, and then even the donations that they make to those NGOs are tax deductible. So they're literally making money out of greenwashing their stuff, and they're horrific to their workers at the point of production, but they're also destroying the economy as well, the environment as well.
And their furniture will tip over and kill children, which means those children won't emit any greenhouse gas. So that's kind of good, actually. It's probably carbon neutral overall.
Yeah, that probably balances it out.
Kind of evens, yeah.
What is that thing? What's that thing they charge? Like, when they can charge you just a little bit extra for Oh, do you want to do like a carbon offset or whatever?
Oh yeah, like the greenwashing at the point of sale or whatever.
What are you talking about? Like, just get it. Like, anyway, I think that I know nothing about climate change beyond that of like, that which any like moderately well-educated like PMC person knows, right? Like, I'm not in any position, nor do I have any reason to question what is a blatant scientific consensus. And I'm not in any way suggesting it's like some hokey conspiracy dreamed up in like a smoke-filled room or whatever. None of that crap. What I am saying is that if, on the assumption that it's real, if you take it seriously, there are a bunch of institutional blockages to attending to it the way that it would need to be attended to. So don't weaponize the potential outcomes of this thing that you're not fucking taking seriously and then wield it to say things like, let's prioritize that instead of healthcare for the working class. Like, this is just a class project at that point.
Yeah. And I think a lot of listeners are probably like, oh, how is the environmental cause being like taken over by like class interests? But like when you look at the orgs, like you kind of mentioned, like Greenpeace, like World Wildlife Foundation, their first leader was like a prince of like the Netherlands and like used to hunt tigers and shit. So it's like these people are not rich people. It's a rich cause and it hasn't really changed from that ever.
Yeah. And I mean, like, even putting aside that whole little like sub-economy that feeds off it, right? Like, putting aside all that NGO crap, like, just quite simply, like, there's another really big contradiction in terms of the extent to which developed nations have been able to industrialize their economies without any kind of restrictions. But then now when you have, still developing nations with, billions of people who are not enjoying the, living conditions that we do, what are you going to do? Like, say to China and India, oh no, it's fine that you don't have electricity and that your people are like dying of like cold in the winter and stuff like that. Like, it's just, I mean, you can't stop capital anyway in terms of like production. Like that, the industrialization is like basically a one-way trajectory unless you start doing some kind of like Khmer Rouge Taliban shit. You know what I mean? So like, what are we talking about here? Like, you
like
need political,
like, but
you need some form of political integration that's going to mean we have shared interests as opposed to competitive interests, and that would need to be taken extremely seriously in order to do something meaningful on that front. And I don't have any easy answers. That's absurd. That's not my role. We're not even at that point in the dialectic, no one's even fucking talking about it. Instead, they're all just like, oh, we have the Green New Deal. Here's some pretty posters and a pretty imaginary world that some thought leader like made. Here's the little like TikTok video about it. Like, all right, mate.
Perfect. Solved
Alrighty. I see you, motherfuckers.
So I guess maybe kind of going off that a little bit. Sam and I were just in New Zealand over Christmas and New Year's, gallivanting, expending some CO2 on planes and shit.
Nice.
Doing a climate change. It was great.
Climate change.
Yeah, we were personally doing a climate change. But
did you grow from the multiplicity of your offenses?
Oh yes, we many rosaries.
You did a racism, you did an imperialism, you did a no growth.
Yeah, we did a no growth on our way to New Zealand and then did some racisms there. It was great. But so you often, I think are accused by your fans about that, like, oh, she's Australian, why does she talk about the US all the time? Which I think there's an easy answer to that. You don't need to answer that. Fuck off, losers.
These are the same people who call themselves anti-imperialists and say like death to America, death to empire, fuck America, it's the worst country that's ever existed, like that
yeah, those people.
And
yeah,
right, okay, yeah,
how dare you comment on that foreigner?
Yeah. It's almost like they run that game so that they can like speak for voiceless people, but just say what they already wanted to say anyway.
Yeah. So there's voiceless people are voiceless. It's almost as though for some reason.
I'm just a fucking empathy care lord. Just radical empathy over here. I'm speaking on behalf of them because I care so hard.
So, I mean, I guess it would be really fascinating to get some of your impressions about maybe like the Australian political landscape and whatever else. But like, obviously Americans, I think, have a very mystified view of the bushfires, for example. And they're like, oh, Australia has bushfires. Brazil had bushfires. They must have, the same failed state government or something, because we don't really learn geography and shit. So I'd be fascinated just to have your brief take on what's the sort of like maybe the qualitative difference you've noticed between like how Australians talk about politicians, about politics, about political conflict versus sort of maybe what you've sort of observed in the discourse, which is, US centric.
Well, first off, I would just like to point out that you just blithely passed over the rise of global eco-fascism, which ties together the Brazilian fires, Bolsonaro, and Australia.
Fuck. I missed the past there. Thank you.
The same place. The anti-Australian conspiracy of it not actually existing is that it lives in Brazil. So that's why they're both happening this time. So
makes sense.
So there's like, I think ultimately like, Americans don't know much about Australia, but that's fine. Like, why would they? We're a tiny country that just like, to the extent that we've sort of been projected onto a international stage, it's generally in the realm of culture more than anything else. So there's like quite a few like Australian musicians and artists and that sort of thing, and then just maybe like in the world of sport as well.
Yeah, and New Zealand's own Russell Crowe.
Yes, exactly. He of the 30 odd foot of grunge. Yeah, so it's just like actors and musicians and that sort of thing. So like, it's a pretty like inchoate perception that they have, and that's fine. Like, who cares? Whatever. I find it endearing, honestly. People like, particularly when I lived in like Canada and the States, people would ask me questions like, they'd tell me about their friend in Perth, and like say their surnames and everything, like, the Roberts, and like they're in this part of blah blah blah, and like in Perth. I'm just like, I mean, we might be small, but like it's still 25 million people, like when the fuck would I know anyone like these random people in Perth? So yeah, it's entertaining.
So on that one, I'm from New Zealand originally, so people do the same thing to me, and I would do the same thing. I'd be like, look, it's it's small. It's not that small. It's like 4 million people, almost 5 million people.
Oh no, you guys are clownish. Like,
yeah, well, somebody one time was like, "Oh, do you know so and so?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I do."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've been
very embarrassing for me.
That's fucking great. Yeah. Oh yeah. In terms of our politics, yeah. I mean, the primary reason, and again, like I've sort of chatted about this with Angela too, and she's from Ireland, and sort of a similar thing insofar as like, because countries like America and to a much lesser extent, but still to an extent, the United Kingdom, in terms of both economic but also like sort of political and cultural hegemony, they really do set the terms. And so Australia, to an enormous extent, our politics basically follow those of the States, but like, I don't know, with some kind of like maybe like 5-year delay, and just absolutely none of the kind of agonism or democratic deliberation. Like we just sort of like slip into whatever they're doing, like it's like an old slipper. Like for instance, like we are so totally and unyieldingly stuck in the technocratic neoliberal era. Like it's just like there is like it's just so unrelentingly self-satisfactorily neoliberal all the way down. And I think part of the problem is that Australians have always been relatively apathetic about politics, and for the longest time that was fine because it came with this kind of like fuck 'em, they're all bastards type irreverence. But I think, you know, when like we've been in a position of collective like growth, like economic growth for well over 30 years. Now, obviously the nature of economic growth is such that like it's concentrating in the hands of one class. But what that does mean is that it hasn't sort of the thing about a crash when it affects everybody or any kind of like, you know, a war, anything like that, is that there's a real uptick in consciousness. Like things are suddenly politicized once more. But like for Australia, things are not politicized, not to anywhere near the extent that I would like them to be. But I just really think that to whatever extent, like because we do just follow blindly behind what plays out in the US, it just felt like it was worth sort of keeping abreast of and or commenting on what was going on there. And then it's just like increasingly I just found myself doing that more than focusing on Australian politics. Like Australian politics is just so like it's just a just cul-de-sac. It's just this end of history, like nonsense.
So part of like I think doing the research for my New Zealand trip, I was interested in looking a little bit like what do the New Zealand left critiques of Jacinda Ardern look like? Because yeah, well, you referenced the kind of like fuck 'em, they're all bastards approach, which New Zealand used to have in a big way too.
Yeah,
although,
yeah, right. But it's just sort of like it's gone away.
It's kind of eroded.
Or it's just
And it's weird, the personality politics that felt like a very American sport for the longest time of like, well, I kind of, you know, I would have a beer with this person or whatever, has crept in there. And then old ScoMo, sorry, I just like saying his name. It's so funny. ScoMo. So
literally, it was only 5 years ago, like 5-6 years ago, like what was it, maybe it was 2013, I don't know, I can't remember. But I literally said to my dad, like in the year that Tony Abbott was like standing for election, like I was one of those like Trump libtards that was like, I swear to God, I'll move to another country. Like he's so ridiculous. But then that happened and whatever. But like to tell me back then that Scott Morrison would become Prime Minister, like actually be elected as such, I wouldn't have believed you. He's just he's just a complete fucking nothing. He's such a nothing. He's a bureaucrat. This is what I mean. Like we are so, like just so technocratic, bureaucratic that this just like complete nothing McNothing winds up in the PM's job. And like the Labour Party's leader was so fucking nothing that they couldn't even beat him in an election where like they had an okay platform. Like it's just so bad. Like anyway, sorry.
No, that I mean that's exactly what we were asking about. I mean he's kind of guileless and without affect. He's kind of uncharismatic.
He's a fucking bureaucrat. He's a pencil pushing stickler. Piece of shit, nothing. Like his politics are crap, but like they're not even interestingly crap. Like give me a fucking tyrant or an ogre or like, you know, these quasi-fascist characters. Like he's just a fucking piece of like. He's just a nothing. He's such a piece of shit. Like he's such a fucking just normie scumbag piece of shit. Like it's much easier, I think, to get animated about cruelty and like it's easier to politicize things when when they have like when there's an aspect of like that, when there's something theatrical about them, right? Whereas this goes to such a like banal fucking loser dad. Like I saw him on the Annabelle, like I watched him on the Annabelle Crabb show a few years ago. You know, she goes to like people's house and then they cook something with her.
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, so basically she'll go to a politician's house and they'll cook a meal in their own kitchen and she'll potter about asking them all sorts of questions as they're doing it. But it's sort of just like meant to be a bit more of a window into I don't know what. But anyway.
Relatable.
Yeah, but like, I mean, it's certainly not as adversarial as you might like it to be, but it's also, I think but I do think like whether she intended or not, there was a lot about it that was extremely, I think, instructive. Not just that one, but just more broadly. But yeah, anyway, so like he cooked a curry and like just with it like the most like shitty ochre Australian accent. He's like, I can't remember the name, but just like garam masala. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's something to that effect. Like, bastardize the pronunciation of this curry, whatever it was.
I'm impressed you put any spices in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like casually explains how, like, me and Julie learned it when we were over in Sri Lanka. We learned, went and did a day's cooking course and learned how to make this one, and now it's like my specialty. And he was in Sri Lanka striking up this like was it Sri Lanka or Cambodia? Maybe it's Cambodia. It's like striking up this like gratuitously cruel, fucking absurd deal to like throw a bunch of asylum seekers completely fucking under the bus and burn like billions of dollars doing so. And there he is just like, oh yeah, this is me fucking specialty, garam masala. And I was just like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, and it's like so bad because it's just like so unremarkable.
Is it
like
is it Nauru? Is that where all the refugees are kept when they're pulled off boats?
Yeah. So there's Nauru, and then there's and Manus Island.
Oh yeah, that's the one which is just like an open air prison camp, basically, right?
They both are. They both
lovely.
are.
Oh well, so he probably learned those recipes there, on his. Oh wait, never mind. Australian politicians don't go there, right?
Mostly no, but they did set it up so that because Nauru's basically a failed state, so they just like run everything and make all the rules. So they put in. Rules that it costs like well over $1,000 to even apply for a visa to visit, just to like make it so that journalists couldn't visit, and like aid organizations and like doctors and lawyers trying to help the refugees and shit. Like the vast majority of them have had their refugee status approved, but because Morrison declared a few years ago that like they would never ever ever come to Australia, they like are just languishing, dying slowly, being tortured, despite, again, having their refugee status approved. Like, the whole thing's horrifying. But, like, this guy's just such a, like, bureaucratic piece of shit that to get anyone animated about anything is, like, incredibly difficult. Well, that's not really why it's incredibly difficult, but it doesn't help.
So your neighbor to the south, New Zealand is usually sort of regarded as like Australia's Canada, and similarly has a sort of Justin Trudeau-like charismatic leader who's very good at crying in public and photo opportunities and being quite actually charismatic and statesman-like.
But no blackface yet.
She hasn't. No blackface video of Jacinda Ardern has emerged yet. But I'm curious of your take on her.
It's almost like the racial politics and the racial ideology in Australia and New Zealand might be different to that of the US.
Oh, weird. That's super weird. I'm curious of your take on Jacinda, because she just seems like this sort of character who, there's just so much hot air there that something needs to puncture at some point.
I don't know. She just seems like a girl boss.
Yes, slay queen.
She reminds me of
I mean,
like
I
an
went to
AOC.
school. I went to school with these like high achieving psychos. Like,
So I actually went to school with Jacinda Ardern. Not even kidding.
oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know her.
That's
I didn't
fascinating to
overlap.
me.
She,
No,
so
like
she-
I know her. Like I was really lucky. I went to private Catholic girls' school on Sydney's North Shore. I'm not of means, but like fucking migrant makes good type story. My dad thought education was really important. It busted his ass to send me there, like that sort of thing. Pretty whatever. Anyway, the point being that this is the type of girl I was surrounded with. Like they're harmless and entirely predictable insofar as like they've always done relatively well. They have lots of nice like empathetic feelings about things, but like the extent to which their policy making is able, even just they're just basically like trapped by the limitations of their own ideology. Like their own analytic frame is one that's just that of the neoliberal subject.
Well,
and like
so what's
what's
fascinating about her is so she was part of the kind of young New Zealand Labour and then became president of the International Union of Socialist Youth, which I was initially impressed by. I was like, oh, then when she sort of became a candidate, I was like, oh, that's an interesting fact. Then looked it up, and it turns out that was just like it was one of these watered down social dem internationalist.
Oh
orgs.
yeah, in the same way as like Labour Party. Like,
Yeah.
you know?
yeah, exactly. So as far as I can tell, she hasn't done anything. I mean, she sort of responds to crises, and they
You
did
have
some
to
like.
be hope. You have to be. You have to be hope. You have to be the change you wish to see in the world.
Well, and yeah, maybe in doing that, she's really the change we all needed. But
If you can dream it, you can do it. Girls can do anything. Girls run the world. Girls run the fucking military-industrial complex.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up the term girl boss, and is it really an Aimee Terese like conversation if we don't bring up everyone's favorite presidential candidate running, Elizabeth Warren? I think you've been kind of like one of the most vocal, and I feel like people are finally catching up. But yeah, how does that feel to know that you called it before everyone else really did?
I mean, that's funny because people like there's like I think there's an interest right now in sort of making me out to be this like bitter Cassandra that's all like that wants credit for seeing something before others did. No, bitch, I want you to fucking see the threat and take heed of it. I wanted everyone to like do something about it. There's no joy in the fact that this prevailing threat is not being taken seriously. And so like the reason I've been a sort of like spectrum about it is because nobody is doing it. Like to the extent that I did have some influence behind the scenes, it's sort of like there are a couple of really good articles that came out, some of which my influence is credited, and then others it was more discreet. So that's really good. But like I don't want credit for this thing. I want everyone to do what needs to be done. Like, but like I guess taking a step back, I think it's extremely telling of the social forces that are operative, and it sort of puts the lie to this notion of like, you know, a resurgent socialist left, because this woman had the One Drop Race Science campaign release literally like a month before her campaign started. She doubled down on it all the way through to like February of last year, like well into the actual thing, well into her actual presidential campaign. And she's extremely well known as having, she's a capitalist to her bones. She did nothing to support Sanders in 2016. You look into her history and it is a Pandora's box of absolute scum. Like the idea that this resurgent socialist left would give do anything but unilaterally oppose her forcefully is kind of absurd. Like, she's a capitalist to her bones, as neoliberal as it comes, and was doing one-drop race science a month before the campaign started.
Nuremberg code.
Like, it's fucking crazy, right? Like, I'm not going mad. Like, it is fucking absurd that this wound up being the giant problem that it is. And particularly because when she started, for the first few months of her campaign, it was actually pretty dismal. She was clocking between 3 and 6% all the way through to March last year. And her first quarter fundraising was so bad that her head of fundraising left in late February. Her campaign was on the goddamn rocks. Pardon my French. Her campaign was on the rocks. And it looked as though she was really in hot water. And then she got new staff member for that, hired more members of Hillary's former team, and then switched up the strategy to the plans thing, the plan gimmick. She's never been a policy wonk. She's never passed a single fucking bill in her 6 years in the Senate. She's never passed a bill. She's never made a law. This is not who this person is. Anyway, but she started that particular campaign tactic in March of last year, and for the subsequent minimum 6 months, the entire media, including those calling themselves socialist, were it's not just that they didn't oppose her, it's that they actively helped save her campaign. Every time she would release a plan, they would propagate it, do hype for it, and every time one of her plans is released, it correlates with a spike in fundraising and support for her. This stuff is material.
Fundraising? She's got a plan for that.
Yes, well, that's the other thing. Well, they started talking in bloody May of last year about the fact that she had transferred almost $11 million from her Senate campaign to her presidential fund, which helped tide her over after that first quarter of dismal fundraising because nobody actually likes her. That $11 million of corporate and PAC money was helping her run this campaign that was could not have been more perfectly designed to sabotage Sanders. And everyone who claims to be Sanders people are just completely asleep at the wheel. It was just I don't know. It's still mind-blowing to me just how obvious this all should have been. This was not, I don't think you need to be a Cassandra. This should have been just completely fucking unremarkable.
Well, I think it was certainly, I'll cop to a certain level of culpability in 2015, because the interesting thing was when Bernie was sort of still in the running and the lazy accusation from the sort of Hillary supporters was, well, you're just sexist, right? That's the only reason you wouldn't support Hillary. You're clearly sexist. Then it was a sort of easy and very lazy remark to be well, you know what? Look, I would support another woman for president, Elizabeth Warren or something, but not Hillary.
Yeah,
she's
of course.
awful.
But that's a reasonable thing to say. Everyone, you have to say. This is the other thing. This is why I don't use you know how you said earlier, that I don't sort of pay rhetorical tribute to the, I don't curtsy in the way that I don't curtsy to the liberal framing of things.
No.
It's because you can't win with that, because you say that and then it's flipped around. This stuff isn't actually tethered to reality. It's an ideology that's always already a political weapon. Of course you'd support another candidate, a female candidate. Fuck
literally
off.
Any other female candidate in the case of Hillary. Anybody.
Just fucking psycho. What's wrong with you? Fuck off. Don't project your bullshit onto me. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting a bit more aggro.
Yeah. So we'd like to kind of move over to this game we did with our other guest, which is one. So you're our second guest, but it's like a smash and pass. So we'll kind of like give you like people or concepts.
What's smash and pass? I'm a girl. I don't know games.
Oh,
I don't know sports or games.
Oh, yeah.
Smash what? Smash Bandicoot?
Smash
What?
or pass.
The lunch? Okay.
If you smash means, yep, you like it, you would do it, you'd hit it. And if you pass,
Okay,
no way.
okay,
no way,
right.
would not hit it.
Oh, so it's kind of like based or cringe.
Yes,
kind of.
or kind of fuck, marry, kill, but with only two options.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fuck or kill, basically.
So smash is fuck.
Yeah,
and
sorry,
then
we're
what's the
being-
other one?
Pass is no.
You can
no
be
fuck.
vulgar. It's totally fine. I don't care. What are the terms again? Smash or pass.
Smash
Okay.
or
All right.
pass, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
So my first one is I listened to your recent episode about abolishing the police, and I wanted to know smash or pass for police unions.
Ooh.
Yeah.
As in, like, would I actually have sex with police?
It's more like
with
do you approve-
policemen?
Are you chill with them,
Or
or
like-
do you hate them? Like that's
I think it's extremely contradictory and riddled. I think actually existing police unions are bad. I think we shouldn't be under any illusions about whose interests the police represent. Like they're designed to secure the interests of the existing order. I have some. I'm not even sure, to be honest.
That's a fair
fine,
answer.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure
Like,
either.
because the other way I think about this is that, like, if you have police who are not being paid sufficiently and don't have decent benefits and all the rest, like, if they're more alienated, more atomized workers, like, are they going to perform, like, are they going to be more of a harm or hindrance to people? And I think, like, if your role is disciplining the disciplining surplus workers, if you're more tired, more exhausted, more poorly paid, you're going to be more of a fucking psycho,
Yeah.
So if you make these people more anxious and stressed, to what extent, I don't know, it's really contradictory. It's the type of thing you would want to, like, talk about a lot with other smart people to try to, like, tease apart some of the
That's a fair answer.
implications.
Not really a sort of whimsical game format appropriate.
No, but, like, sorry, I don't mean to be such, like, a boring prude, but yeah, I think it's really, really difficult.
No, it
It's
is.
really,
I think you're
I'm
right.
not sure. Yeah.
Sam opened with a hard one. This next
Yeah.
one's much more whimsical, I promise. All
Okay,
right.
cool.
A genie that grants you black girl magic.
So, in other words, Rachel Dolezal comes over to my house, basically.
Yeah.
But I don't need a genie for that. Like, I can get a spray tan. Because but, like, black girl magic isn't a thing. So when we say black girl magic, it simply means, like, passing as a certain, like, racial stereotype, like, in order to what? Like, I don't know. Like, this isn't real.
No,
like, it's not real.
This one was a test to see whether you would lapse out of materialism in the hope of gaining this wonderful black girl magic. So you passed.
What is black girl magic?
It's nothing. It's nothing.
It's a nonsense.
It's a liberal fantasy.
It's as real as magic. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Black girl. Yeah, what the? I'll have some of that. Have some of that fucking Beyonce magic.
Yeah.
known as
Okay,
known
genie
as
that turns
money.
you into Beyonce with the money, but
I don't.
you have to put up with her husband.
I don't really want to have to bang Jay-Z.
No, exactly. See, all right, that's a pass. We'll go with pass on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, pass. Pass Jay-Z.
So my next one is a person. It's YouTuber ContraPoints.
Would I sleep with her? I don't.
You don't have to literally sleep.
Yeah, you don't need to sleep with them. It's more
her.
like, do you approve of them?
Oh,
as,
is
like,
she
a person?
hot? She's hot. She seems clever, like relatively clever as far as fucking lips go. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm extremely, like, what's that? What is it on the Kinsey scale? What's straight
1
on that scale?
1 to 6, and
Is
1 is
it?
very straight. 3 is very
Yeah,
bi,
I'm
I
maybe
think.
like a 1. I'm like, okay, if 3 is bi, then I'm like a 1.
There you go.
I'm like extremely straight, like totally heteronormative in my taste. So like, yeah, no.
So yeah,
Guy, please.
literally pass on that one for actual smashing. This is we fucked ourselves on the euphemism here.
Yeah.
We should have just called it like, do you like this thing, Aimee Terese?
Hot or not? Sorry, I just keep giving you word salads.
No,
I'm
this is
sitting
weird.
here with I'm sitting here eating pages out of my thesaurus and spewing them into the microphone.
No,
this is what I do, folks.
We're just culturally ignorant and forgot that you were from Australia. And
This is also just us because, like, this is not a well-adapted format bit. We're not really a format bit podcast.
Well, I'm also not really. I'm doing a no growth. I'm sorry. I'll hashtag do better.
All right. So, okay, assuming we've actually just gone very conceptual on this, and we're really just asking you for quick fire answers on whether you like things or not. This
Hot
next
or
one's
not?
better. Go, I think, Sam, it's your one.
I already went.
I know, but
I'll
your
go.
one's better.
Okay. Soviet aesthetics in the modern quotations left.
In the modern left.
Yeah, or people that tender the
Oh,
left.
like that, like their appropriation.
Yeah, like the
Kind of
people that-
LARPing.
Appropriation
Yeah,
is
LARPing.
not. Yeah, like guillotine logos and all that crap is like just massive cringe. But like if we're talking like Soviet aesthetics in terms of like, there's like retro like posters. I don't know. I posted some of them a while back, where it's like a hot muscular men looking muscular, and like then that's hot, definitely. But
agree,
if it's like radicalized, like fucking millennials talking about guillotines from like mommy and daddy's house, like no.
Yeah,
Eat
Lenin
the
laser
rich,
eyes.
they say. Yeah, eat the rich. I'm like, all right, fucking your dad first.
We should really cop to the fact that like we have a sort of rainbow colored pink and purple Nikolai Ceausescu as the logo for our podcast. So like we have to cop to
Awesome.
us.
Get into it. No, but like I think it's great. Like do that. That's totally fine. But
We're doing
like, you're
an
not
irony.
under.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah,
hot.
exactly. It's fine. Do your thing. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, I
But
know.
if you ask me, I'll tell you.
All right, so this last one is maybe more literal smash or pass, as in copulate with or do not copulate with. All right, so this
Carry
one
on.
is someone who is your physical ideal, but he owns more than one notorious Ruth Bader Ginsburg T-shirt.
Physical ideal.
Yeah,
Well,
just a specimen of
physical-
beauty.
Yeah, well, physical is also mental because I'm not a Cartesian dualist. So that
Fuck, you got
also
us.
means, yeah, that also means his brain is like my literal ideal, right?
Okay,
So-
no, only externally.
So it's fine.
Like the body.
These are just gifts. These are just gifts from his fucking mother and sister. And we can't criticize those. We all know what mothers and sisters are like. I mean, I got fucking Samantha Power's book for Christmas.
Oh fuck! I'm so sorry.
And it was a genuinely thoughtful gift. No,
Yeah.
it was genuinely thoughtful. I was genuinely touched by it.
Yeah.
And it was fucking hilarious at the same time. Like, we can do both.
All right, so we're saying if he's physically ideal, and this includes obviously his actual material substrate on which his mind is constructed, and he's a nice person about receiving thoughtful gifts.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, if we're talking about someone who is like aesthetically appealing but is a shit lib, I don't know, like that's not gonna. I will, like, I've always found it's much, much easier and much more interesting to, like, socially at least, to converse with people who don't share my politics and who are not liberals. Like, I tend to find, like, anyone who's, like, politically engaged but is a liberal, like too annoying.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like it's not like out of some like purist bullshit. And if maybe I'd meet the right person for whom like it just didn't matter, like I would never rule that out. But like, oh, they're so fucking annoying.
Yeah, they really are.
Like, it's the prevarication and the unwillingness to like to commit to anything, and just like the I'm like borderline spectrum, so just like the unwillingness to like extrapolate from your own fucking reasoning into like its logical conclusions, that would just kill me. I would end up stimming out all the time too much. It wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be pretty.
That sounds like a pass, but like,
Yeah.
I think a well-reasoned one.
Yeah.
But I'd definitely smash.
Oh, good. Okay.
Oh, okay.
What am I talking about?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Oh,
we got
of course.
one. Okay.
Would
Great.
I, like, if it feels married, like, probably
No.
not.
We're talking about a casual encounters kind of thing here.
Oh, who
We're
the fuck
gays.
cares?
Yeah, okay.
Who the fuck are we talking about politics? He's my physical ideal, of course.
Well, it's sort of an interesting meta point, right? Is the
Oh, who the fuck cares?
No, well,
who
some people
cares
do.
about politics?
Some people like
He's fucking hot.
Yeah,
He's hot.
Hey, we're right
Of
there
course
with you.
would. This is a no-brainer. Of course.
I mean, I
Literally,
fucked a
doesn't
Tory
even
once,
matter
so.
if he has a brain. Yeah, no, totally. Yes, this is absurd.
Great.
Of course.
Thank
you. It doesn't matter at all.
Perfect.
Jesus Christ.
You weren't expecting this
Sorry,
kind of hard-hitting journalism from
No,
us, were you?
it's my own fault because here I am giving this 20-minute answer, and it's just like, of course I would. Of course I would.
Fantastic.
Easy.
Well, this is all the time we have. Aimee, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
it all.
My pleasure.
And we look forward to our collective cancellation now for platforming, for us projecting our Nazbol Strasserite tendencies onto you, an unwilling
yeah.
participant in this.
Of course.
We also want to grant
Yes.
you a gift. You have the privilege to say faggot whenever you want as gay leftists. That's your right now.
Yeah,
So
you got a faggot card. You can just call anyone
Yes.
a faggot anytime you want.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. I'll put that in my in my storage box along with my N-word license.
Perfect.